Suppose there's a medical emergency right now. On one side is the all-time legendary Lewis Hamilton with a single-seater Formula One race car. And on the other is an ordinary cab driver with his 2012 dated cab. Who's naturally going to be more significant to us? Okay, imagine this scenario. You're the captain of the Indian cricket team playing the finals against Australia. 40 runs needed of the final 5 overs of the World Cup finals. You have a choice to make between two batters. The first one is an exciting young debutant with an extremely high strike rate. And the second is an experienced batter with a high and reliable average. Who's going to be your instinctive first choice pick? Yeah. So, though the first choices in both the scenarios were exciting and thrilling than the second, you'd want to pick a reliable option. Exactly what every investor desires in the long run. What's the point of an amazing invention whose application is impossible? Or $1 million paid athlete who just cannot perform? I could go on with such countless illustrations. But the core, that remains the same. Like we say in our university, performance is reality. And don't you think that the ultimate core expectations of all businesses is profits and growth? Do we all agree? Do we all agree? Yeah, okay. So I was in the 8th grade, merely in the 8th grade, when I discovered my perpetual love and passion for finance. Do you think this was a significant decision for a 14-year-old to make? No, not for me. Actually, I felt it was late, because by then I had realized that every blood cell kind of had finance and business imprinted on it. I'm a Marwadi. It was natural for me to get at that. Okay. A year later, my father passed away. Under unforeseen circumstances, my mother had to take over the 110-year-old jewelry and pawnbroking business. Now, this was a business started by my grandfather in a small 60 square feet office in Kalaspalyam, Bengaluru, which was further expanded by my father and his elder brothers into retail luxury business. Now, this is a conventional retail luxury business, but it was unconventional and disruptive for a single lady at that point in time to run a business of that magnitude. My mom, she's been the most amazing mentor and the strongest axis for my growth and learning curve. So my brother and I, having studied modern day financial markets, marketing techniques, and business models, we kind of grew up like some curious annoyance to my mother all the time, rebelling against all the traditional policies and practices of our business. However, modern day businesses, modern day possibilities and traditional wisdom, they blend well to frame our financial ideologies, what we are at today. So I was in the final year of my undergraduate studies, and having completed my initial levels in financial planning and investment operations certificate, it struck me that probably this is the right time to convert my theoretical knowledge into practical and monetary growth. Good, no? Perfect, all of you agree? So, 2019, first investment into the Indian stock markets. You all know what happened after that. Everyone told me the same thing. Excellent decision, Manav, wrong timing. March 2022 came. I lost 60% of the value in my portfolio. You know, we Marwadis can digest anything. Not weight loss and monetary loss. Very hard for us to digest. Exactly what happened with me. I was not able to look at those numbers. So what happened? We all know after that, within a year, markets doubled, markets went up extremely, but not all stocks in my portfolio. Some stocks went on to with deteriorating numbers every single quarter. And it was not easy for a no-voice investor to look at these numbers. So I wanted, it said in my family, if your investment is going to be questioned at early stages, it's not a well-planned or well-analyzed one. I realized, so I went into introspection to reaffirm with my basics. And I compared these businesses with my own business to try and understand what was happening. So let's understand the scenario. The COVID outbreak, it triggered the biggest economic crash in immediate history that we know. Now, what this did was, it was beyond the intelligence of any level that could have predicted such an event or averted such a crisis. You all could resonate? Everyone was on the same grounds here. Though times of crisis and problems or economic downturns have not been alien to mankind, the reach and magnitude of this outbreak were extremely unique. Your companies with modern day technology, high levels of innovation, excessive manpower, and massive funding were posting losses at such huge numbers and facing existential crisis. And on the other hand, traditional businesses, including my own, were thriving against all odds. It was actually very different. We simply wrote off all the lockdown periods as a bad quarter for business, but excellent for family bonding. And we were ready to face the future like some knights in shining armor. Before we move on, disclaimer, I am sincerely not any cute and updated version of Voldemort or Thanos that is resisting any evolution. My ideology is simple. The evolution has some severe leaks. Having covered them, modern age businesses and startups will deliver the future to us way faster than we think it can. So, also, I use the words traditional businesses and family managed businesses synonymously. So, let's take a look at some extremely contrasting facts. Data says that 91% of all startups fail within the first 5 years of their innovation, mainly attributed to the lack of, or first 5 years of their inception, mainly attributed to the lack of innovation. In fact, data also says that 50% of all new businesses get closed by the fifth year, and an astounding portion of 70% by the 10th year. Whilst, on the other hand, in the same frames of time, family managed businesses go on to live for an average age of 35 to 40 years, a major chunk living beyond the 50 and the 100 marks. They got some tortoise abilities to live longer, right? Big question. To move on, India has a massive 107 and counting unicorns, out of which merely 23 are profitable, which accounts to not even one-fourth. Whilst on the other hand, India also has 111 publicly listed family managed businesses that accounts to a whopping number of $839 billion valuation, which give Indian stock markets an unparalleled level of shock absorbing capacities. It's actually quite astonishing. To move on, actually, Indian startups and modern age businesses have been the favorites of all investor communities. Since 2016, Indian startups and modern age businesses have been raising, on an average, a massive number of $10 to $11 billion every single quarter. It touched an all-time high of a massive $14 billion in the third quarter of 2021, against a 40% low of just $6.8 billion in 2022's last quarter. A serious sense of loss of trust? Whilst on the other hand, Indian family managed businesses have delivered an average return of 13.9% per year since 2006, compared to a less than half returns of just 6% to their non-family owned peers. Astonishing figures? The next one is even disturbing. In 2022, there were almost 20,000 people who were forced to resign or fired off in India from just 50 startups. Just 50 startups. What's even worse is that these numbers continue to grow at a staggering rate, even in 2023. On the other hand, data says that 78% of family managed businesses went out of their way during the lockdown to retain their existing employees and staff. In fact, a small research conducted by Credit Suisse during the pandemic found out that family managed businesses easily outperform non-family managed businesses in both Europe as well as Asia. And these family managed businesses scored significantly higher on factors like defense characteristics, growth, and even ESG compliance, economic, social, and governance. They scored significantly higher. In fact, if you take a look at this chart in front of you, this was a research carried out and published in the Harvard Business Review. This chart clearly shows how sometimes family managed businesses might not have the springs to scale the economic highs in a booming economy, however, are significantly stable in an economic downturn or in times of crisis. You know, the omnipresence of family managed businesses in India is an underappreciated factor to India's economic stability in times of crisis. So, you must realize we're talking about businesses from the size of your small mom and pop stores in your neighborhood to the size of the world's biggest business houses like Reliance, Wipro, Walmart, and so on. All of them are run on family managed business principles. I'm sure you all are able to follow. Now, having looked at these extremely contrasting facts, these raise four very vital questions for us to address. Which brings us to the first one. Given all the talent, attractions, expertise available in each aspect, and the modern day possibilities, why is the failure rate so high for modern age businesses? Is it too much of a live fast and die young concept? Or do they need something else for a longer life, like some sort of a financial green tea? What is the secret? Short term opportunities come up all the time. The carpe diem concept, to make the most of every single opportunity every single day, it's no wonder a fantastic way to move ahead. However, traditional businesses do not make changes to their fundamentals or structures for short term gains. They feel it's a serious management atrocity to move away from your vision statement. Gains are good, they're really good, but goals are vital at all times. Like the popular saying goes, you must look at value creations, not just chase valuations. A lot of modern age startups and businesses that are going into a contraction or a consolidation phase today expanded in the post COVID boom. Just a year and a half ago, what is seen is that there is a major sense of more haste and less speed that is felt in their managerial decisions. For instance, now the lockdown created a major demand for online coaching and education. All of us know that. Now, this major demand in turn created an explosion of startups in the edtech industry. What happened? Situations neutralized, people came back to offline, we loved our offline classes. Therefore, the vision of these businesses is neutralized. In fact, I prove it by numbers. Out of 8 businesses that wound up their business in the year 2022 in India, 5 belong to the edtech industry. The ideology is simple again. If the vision of a business is going to be based on a situation, once the situation neutralizes, of course, the failure is inevitable. That brings us to the second question. Modern day businesses are exposed to far more technological possibilities and data-driven systems. However, risk management frameworks from these traditional businesses are far more efficient. Why? What is their recipe for troubled times? If you have noticed any traditional Indian business, you'd notice a very, very strong value-based policy framework that is being passed on for decades and even centuries in some cases, from one generation to generations that follow. Like in the case of my own family, there is a sense of tranquility that is noticed in these businesses as they continue their cost cutting and profit at all cost policy at all times. Don't you think modern age businesses, in the wake of capturing a greater market share, have leaned away from these basics? Exactly the point that leads to greater troubles. In fact, legacy is continued in this business in their principles and core values, not in practices. Now, because all decisions are taken with an already existing framework, there comes a sense of uniformity and consistency in businesses. Now, this is vital for two things. Not taking excessive risks on one hand, which we'll cover in the next part, and there is the basis that is really strong and concrete, where developments and adaptability increases in these businesses. In fact, the 10th global survey conducted by PwC on global family businesses clearly showed that 71% of family managed businesses with strong digital capabilities were able to change the course of their organizations on a short notice itself. Traditional businesses do not rely on external sources for a lot of crisis management. They try to do everything on an internal basis itself. So the concept is simple: being self-insured. If you're going to be self-insured against times of crisis and economic downturns, it is more efficient than any sophisticated risk management tool. You simply cannot overlook the efficiency of simplicity, right? That brings us to the third question. Funding opportunities have increased and market boundaries have blurred to almost non existence. Now, despite all of this, there has been a staggering number of failures and bankruptcies that have gone in the last 2 years or 3 years. Why? What is the problem exactly? In traditional businesses, there remains a great degree of skin within the business. Now, because such a high stake is self invested, what this does is it kind of creates an everlasting commitment to the business. Now, the room for making errors or being reckless is not there. In fact, I'd like to put it up in this way: all Indian family managed businesses have self assumed responsibilities. In fact, for my mother, every single branch of my ancestral business is a child to her. You all have studied the separate entity concept in accounting? Everyone? Yeah, we all have. It's exactly the opposite way how family managed businesses work. They work on the popular Bollywood dialogue which goes by Do Jism Ek Jaan. Two bodies, one soul. That is the level of impeccable coordination promoters maintain with their business. If the business is doing good, the promoters are happy. If the businesses aren't doing good, the promoters aren't. In fact, in 2014, a survey carried out clearly showed how the promoters of family managed businesses react differently to economic downturns. It is said that 76% of these promoters would reduce or not take a distribution, and an extended version of 58% of these owners would not even take a salary in order for the business to survive. The point is very clear. These traditional businesses do not rely on external sources for their capital and risk management resources. So what essentially happens is, at the end of the day, there is an environment where there's healthy cash flows, there is manageable debt and excessive R&D before any expansion or contraction. Now, these automatically have remedial capacities. They work more like antiseptics or vaccines against viruses. You all agree with that? Yes? Okay. Moving on to the fourth question, the last one. Despite such rigorous and scrutinizing modern day recruitment processes, why exactly do layoffs keep coming back to plague and haunt major economies? Have you all seen this? It's everywhere all the time. To understand this, I'd like to ask one question. If I were to ask you to reorganize your home, are you going to buy exquisite artifacts and furniture? Or do you plan on constructing a new room or a hall altogether? Which one? A or B? A, right? You got my point. Exactly what the next generation businesses have done. They've ran themselves into deadlocks for short term gains and opportunities. In fact, major companies like Meta and Amazon have come out to admit that their forecasts were not in accordance to actual realities, leading to massive layoffs. The cascading effect on economies is devastating, actually. In fact, if you look at family managed businesses, the culture internally is extremely powerful. Hiring and firing are not seen as short term decisions. In fact, they are seen with the viewpoint that once these decisions are taken, they cannot be undone. Also, one more thing that was noticed is that family managed businesses have a higher retaining rate because alongside qualifications, talent, and caliber, experience is highly valued. This took me to an astonishing research. So, this research was carried out in as early as 2007 in a country like the United States of America, in their family managed businesses. The numbers are shocking. 24% of those family managed businesses were being led by a woman president or CEO. In fact, a shocking number of 31.3% of those businesses saw a woman leading them in the future. And majority of 60% of these businesses had women on their top level positions, compared to a very disturbing number of just 2.5% women leading the Fortune 1000 companies, Fortune non-family managed 1000 companies at that point in time. So, to sum up, do we realize a pattern? There is just something about family managed businesses, traditional businesses, their structures, their strategies, their leadership, their finances, and their communication that makes them the players of longevity. And if the modern age businesses and startups start inculcating these traditional concepts, new possibilities, actually new horizons of possibilities, would dawn upon us every single day. Do you all agree? Actually, we live in a world or an era where impossible is actually quite rarely used. Thanks to the disruptive vision of modern age startups that have changed our life from the existing possibilities. Today, the world is being delivered to our doorstep, from food to furniture and from attire to personal services. Today, our general conversations about our dreams and wishes automatically get curated into wish lists on our smartphones. It's amazing. Modern age businesses must realize their consistent delivery and their consistent growth is extremely important for us, not just for economic purposes, but for the progress of the human race itself. Like Bruce Lee once popularly said, long term consistency beats short term intensity. To sum up, traditional businesses have core values and principles. These are methodologies that have a high level of consistency within them, which will make these modern age businesses the horses for the long races. Traditional concepts are fundamentals. They come with a high degree of flexibility and elasticity, which makes them an idea worth sharing, implementing, and growing upon. Thank you.